think what I've learned from that in my personal experience about when you're learning, you constantly learn, especially with marketing, it's you think you've nailed it and then you look into it and you realize you've lost it. That is a completely evolving. I think marketing, you've got to be, like you said, focus on getting revenue, sales. Your marketing has got to be on point, more point. I think the most important thing what people do, it's not really, obviously it's customers, but it's actually getting customers, marketing properly, because a lot of companies say they're making £1,000 a week and then they're saying, well, I'm not growing. They're not investing anything into marketing. So obviously if they're not marketing, you're not going to grow. It's that simple. Word of mouth does work, but only at a certain amount of pace. So what I learned was we have to market, but I'm still learning. So we'll market and we'll get it wrong. We still get it wrong. And I'm pretty sure you guys do. It's always evolving. There's not really... There's kind of a blueprint for it, but it does seem to be changing slightly. I mean, I've been in business since 1997. I set up when I was about 19. I really didn't have a clue. It's probably I would only consider myself a businessman probably in the last 5 years. It's recent. It's not. I was an engineer focused, that mindset of an engineer. You've probably always been more down the business side. And I suppose if Joe would have never met Sugar and won The Apprentice, I think he probably would have been, because there's a big thing with people when you're running a company. I mean, you know, when say you get to £1 million and you're still on the tools and you're still running about like an engineer, well, you're going to get burnout. I've had that. You know, you get burnout because I think once you get to that stage where you are at in this business, I know that you still sit in the background a lot and you're still doing the figures and you're still getting involved in all that sort of stuff. You pretty much run all that. Mine is front end, you know this because you know me personally, front end of just going out, getting that work, doing it, and then have a back end. So the reason why I touched on that, because you with the yin and yang I mentioned with you and Joe, is that you've got Joe that's visionary, very, very visionary. He's always got ideas, and I'm pretty sure the guy doesn't sleep much because constantly, you know, you look at his socials, he's never stop. Whereas in the background, you're constantly doing the exact same thing, but mainly on the figures, the numbers don't lie, figures don't lie. And that's one thing when I've done the mastermind, as you know. That's one thing that I was struggling with because I didn't have my numbers right. I was kind of everything. I still do it, to be honest with you. You know me personally, stacked in my head. So that wasn't teachable. So I guess when you went to Sugar, they learnt you something that was kind of teachable, that you could grow. Because I think one big problem that companies have is having a method of how to do something, but they just don't know how to teach that method because the director holds it in his head and he probably thinks this is too much hard work am I hearing the right vibe here?
Yeah.
Trying to basically teach people how to do things, but you give up because you think, sod it, I'll do it myself. So how have you, you know, in Impra, how did you overcome that? Because I can imagine, like, you were doing £1 million a month, weren't you, at one point?
We were, yeah.
So
8 figures.
That's a lot, a hell of a lot. I mean, I run a business. I know
business.
the leads. I know what you'd have been doing. I know how much, how much hard work that is just to even convert. You know, it's very, very difficult. How did you teach that process, make it easier to teach that process? I know I've done a lot of training here, so I understand, but would you agree that if you're going to do anything in business, no matter what it is, it's got to be teachable? If you look at McDonald's, teachable, kids run it. I think that's the key I'm trying to get at it. How do you do that in a business that requires a lot more? Is there a magic recipe, a blueprint?
I think a good business doesn't depend on the owner operator's time investment. I think initial stages is necessary. I think that, you know, what we learned from Alan Sugar's Lord Alan Sugar's team at the time was, you know, the foundational stuff. They planted a seed and gave us the direction of what it was that we needed to know, but they certainly didn't. They weren't the ones that taught us it, if that makes sense. They showed us what it was that we needed to learn, and then we went on the path of learning.
You took the water and you had to drink it.
Yeah, so you know, you learn very quickly, I suppose, that you know, a business that gets beyond 5, 6, 7 people, you can't directly manage more than that. So what you have to get good at is developing the next wave of leadership, very much so. So people can take over things for you so that you're not in the day-to-day anymore. Because if
stages,
absolutely, if the business depends on the owner operator's input on a daily basis, it's not a good business. It's not a well-structured business. There's a period of time where that's absolutely necessary, and it is absolutely necessary to have a leader. But but in terms of the time investment, a good business is structured in such a way that, and you know, this is pinnacle stuff. This is hard to get to. I'm not saying this is, you know, you arrive and then it suddenly all falls into place. This is a challenging thing to get to, but you know, recruitment, training people, developing the system that they plug into, making sure that you can hold them accountable by introducing measurable metrics, and making sure that there's a great feedback loop in place, and making sure that you've got a reliable environment for people to become experts in their own field.
I think to make the experience as fun as you can as well, because that's one thing that I've fallen into, frustration as a boss. Frustrated. So you mentioned about the tiers, didn't you, of people? So sometimes with me, it's better for me not to pass that message on because I'm frustrated. So when you've been here, you're frustrated. So sometimes you want to scream and shout and it's like, oh, whatever. But sometimes it's better to have that level of commandment. You can go to them, then they can go to them in a different
It's
approach.
the only way to grow a business. There's no other way. You can't manage every element of a business. There's no one individual on planet Earth that can, aside from possibly Elon Musk.
Yeah, he's an alien.
More than likely an alien. But you know, outside of that anomaly, it cannot be done. Like, you need people beneath you, you need a system beneath you, and you need to keep them motivated. You need to make sure that there's incentive. You need to make sure that they're bought into the vision. They're clear on what it is they need to do on a daily basis. They need to make sure that the operations run as smoothly as they possibly can, so that you can focus then. Once you've created a foundation, you can focus on growth. Instead of fixing stuff when it inevitably goes wrong, because it does in business. 100%. But you need people to be able to fix the stuff for you. If you're constantly battling, your business isn't right yet. It's not set up in such a way
at
that
stage at the minute. I mean, we keep going through this at the moment, and I'm getting it more and more right. So obviously, I'm down here today. When I was coming down, I was listening to Audible, Scaling Up. I don't know if you ever listened to that. And there's some really good information in there. But I think, you know, like any business that's out there, I think these processes, they're not really new. They're actually very, very old processes. Obviously, software, systems, operation has changed, but the fundamentals have never really changed of how it works, it seems to me.
I don't care what it is that you sell. It matters how you sell it in business. In my opinion, business is a 1 + 1 = 2 scenario. And my brain happens to work that way, in the sense that I like to see numbers. But genuinely, it's the mechanics that you set up. There's marketing functions that are required. There's sales functions that are required. There's delivery that you need to take care of. There's finance stuff that you need to take care of. The functions remain the same, irrelevant of what business that you are in. You could be selling cupcakes or you could be selling boilers. It really doesn't matter. It matters about the conveyor belt that you create, and then the people that are handling and in control of that conveyor belt. And that, in my opinion, is what business is all about. And people want to try to reinvent the wheel and be the next clever thing and be novel in their approach when it comes to business. But the truth is, it's just hard graft and grind and doing the basics again and again and again and again and again.
Yeah, so all you can do is make that wheel more shinier and put better tyres on it, really.
Optimize that wheel.
Correct.
Yeah, don't try to reinvent it.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that, because a lot of the stuff, like I said, I was definitely not. I mean, I never even classed myself as entrepreneurial. I've got property, I've got a maintenance company, as you know, and I've also got the M&R, which is my fundamental business. That's the one I concentrate on. But I never realised until, like, being around people like yourselves, because I never had the opportunity because you mentioned beneath you. Now, just so everyone's clear, it doesn't mean below you. It meant beneath you in command. Nothing.
In terms of hierarchy.
Correct. Yeah. Not as some people might take it. But ultimately, I've used that phrase before. If you're out with your friends and you're at the top of your chain, for instance, of business, some of my friends will tell me to shut up, and they will, because ultimately they don't want to talk about it. So I found the way around that was to basically surround yourself around people. But for me, in my area, I knew lots of businessmen, but to be honest with you, I'd only meet them on a night out or somewhere, so I couldn't really spend any time with them. So with me spending time around people that are far more up the chain, them pecking order, whatever you want to call it, I've learned so much, and it makes me realise that a lot of it is your mindset, and a lot of it is that you're holding yourself back. I mean, you teach that, don't you? That's one of the things you say about mindset is really important to change it. Appearance, there's loads of keys to it, like you've mentioned. But even if you go back, when I was listening to the Audible on the way down, they're talking about businesses that are really old, and actually the principles that they've talked about something called lean. getting your company lean, which is something that's years and years and years old. Still not changed, still implemented in companies today. So I just find it really interesting, especially your story, how you went from the boilers and the boilers that you were selling, how you was doing it. What point did you think we're getting burnout here? This is exhausting, because I know that that's possibly happened at some point. What was the
towards the end was a challenge. Towards the end of that company, so we exited that company, and again, being youngsters and probably less experienced than what we should have been attempting an exit, and also I think having bad advisors around us. In truth, some misinformation. Without question, I think that it did. But that was always the ambition. We were never that interested in, back then, we were never that interested in money, funnily enough. We weren't interested in a comfortable lifestyle. We were interested in growing a national business. That was the goal, that was the ambition, that's what we did. Would I do it again? Possibly, yeah. I mean, for now, I'm fairly content with where I'm at. But in truth, I'm not somebody that wants to currently conquer the world. I'm somebody that's, and we are slightly misaligned, I'll be honest on that. But, it's what's good for him is good for Joe, and what's good for me is good for me. So right now,
that's important.
And we acknowledge it between us. I think we're very clear in terms of what it is that we both want. So, I think that I'm not somebody that is interested anymore in the national takeover or the global takeover with the company. I'm somebody that's interested in myself more so. I would say internally as opposed to externally. Yeah, my goal now is constant and never-ending improvement of myself personally. So I want to be a better father. I want to be a better partner. I want to be a better businessman. I want to be a better employer. I want to just be better than I was yesterday. And so I feel like I'm competing against myself now more than anybody else.
Yeah. Interesting. That's really interesting. So when Impra finally did finish and you exited and you got out, then you didn't really have anything to do, I suppose, did you? So,
well, it was a strange situation because
that's what I wanted to ask.
Yeah, actually, what happened was that Joe exited first. So Joe exited the company just before COVID, and in his mind, Joe had Trade Mastermind already conceptualized, already developed as a great idea, and started generating clients almost from day dot. So he had that down. He knew that that's what he wanted to do. And I had to oversee, or part of the deal of that structure was when Impra was sold, I had to oversee the transition from Joe being the MD of the company to then effectively me becoming the MD of the company and transitioning into the new ownership. And
so you did a hard job.
It was a challenging role because the way that the deal was structured, it was an asset and goodwill sale as opposed to an equity sale. So the way that the company was sold, there was an element of it that was wrapped up, and there was liability that existed and was dissolved. So I wasn't a very particularly, and neither was Joe at this point in time, one of the favorites within the industry of people that wanted to do business with at that point. But there was a vision for what these new owners wanted to do, and I was going to help and facilitate, oversee it. And I don't think that they didn't have any idea of the industry. They come from logistics.